Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Tucker Hazel, and today we are here to discuss the very greatest year in human history. We're here to talk
Yes.
about 2007, and most particularly, we're here to talk about
Games.
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 We got a lot of
Yeah,
games here that we're going to talk about.
A lot of weed.
But the name of the game for our video about games,
Yeah.
or video games,
Mm-hmm.
isn't simply to talk about the year as a whole, but instead to pick what we feel are the most essential games of the year. And
Five of them.
We'll talk about what we mean by that more as we share our 5 games.
Yeah.
But by and large, the idea of an essential game is one that really pushed the industry forward,
Yes.
started a new trend, broke new ground, and
Mhm.
generally sort of was an important stepping stone from then to now.
Yes.
We got a lot of great submissions from our community,
did,
which we're going to
yeah.
read out. We got a lot of superfluous games we're going to mention.
Yes.
But we got a lot to do. We got a packed agenda, Tucker.
We do, yeah.
I think we should just get into
The
it.
BLB agenda is rollicking and rolling. You're not going to be able to want to get off. Abram,
Yeah.
this is an important one for us to cover. This
Yeah.
is not the first time we've done this video.
Year we were
This is
born.
serious, by the way. What?
This is the year we were born.
Nope.
That's why it's an important video for us.
But we have done 2014,
Yes.
and we did
2017.
2017, yes. And 2007 is one that was always on high on our list to cover because this is one of the notoriously best years in gaming. And when you look
Yeah.
at how many franchises were started, how many design trends were started, how many of the best games of all time came out this year, it's undeniable. 2007
Yeah.
is a phenomenal year for games. And there are going to be some omissions in the 5 games that we're choosing that you're going to be like, huh? How'd they not choose that? And we hope that through our conversation here, you'll understand why we picked the 5
Yeah.
and why we didn't pick the ones that aren't in the 5. But the list went like 10 strong, and you can make very good cases for a lot of them. But
True.
again, for essential here is going to be mostly things that influence design, things that started new trends. But let's start with our first game
Yeah.
on our 5 most essential games of 2007 list.
And these are not in any order.
No.
These are.
No.
This is a 5 unordered games. We're gonna start with one we actually can.
We're not going to talk about the fourth most least essential.
True.
There's no order.
Let's start with one we can do a little bit of prop comedy for. We
Yes.
don't unfortunately have all of these games to hand,
Pretty
but
close.
we do have Sonic and Secret Rings.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert: this is not one of the 5.
No,
most
and
essential. The first
and not essential in any way.
No, but the first game on our list here is Call of Duty 4.
Modern Warfare.
Modern Warfare.
Yes.
Look at me. There we go. Nice
Mhm.
shot. Have a look at it. Remember it.
Yes.
The big quiz later.
Do you remember Modern Warfare? A game that is just as iconic as Call of Duty can get.
Yeah.
I think there is an argument to be made of this being the most iconic and maybe the most important Call of Duty game. Easily one of the most revered first-person shooters of all time. Easily one of the most influential first-person shooters of all time. Call of Duty 4 is, as the title suggests, not the first Call of Duty game. There were
True.
3 before it. Actually, there might have been like Big Red One.
Big
or like
Red One was before.
World
it.
War Final Fronts. That was a PS2
World War
game.
was after this one, actually.
No, it wasn't. World War.
Yeah, World War
Wait.
came in 2008.
Oh no, you're
I
right.
believe.
You're right. Oh, my bad. Yeah, you're right. It was between the 2 Modern Warfares.
Yeah.
That's where I got it mixed up. But this has to be on the list.
Yeah. Let me stop you there for a moment because we got a comment here I want to read out.
Oh, perfect.
We had a comment here from our friend and co-host of Back Cod Banter.
Yes.
Our retrospective Call of Duty show that is returning next week.
What are you talking about?
I don't know.
Oh,
I give it
okay.
a false hope.
I thought you had something planned. I didn't know about.
I'm not even on that show. It's up to you. I'm just fucking around with today's commenter, Mr. Andrew Roscoe
Yes.
of Back Cod Banter and My Star Wars Show fame, who says,
Yes.
COD 4 is not only one of the most important entries in 2007, it's one of the most important games, period. It set the bar for first-person shooters and created an entire subculture of video games.
Absolutely. I mean, this game, we can talk about pretty much any angle of its design, popularity, tonal influence, aesthetic influence, multiplayer influence, single-player influence. And you did a little bit of research on this one, reading some articles, watching a couple of videos, so we can break down exactly why this game, because this game is influential in so many ways.
Yeah.
You can just say everything, but we want to get a little more specific.
Yeah, I actually watched a good video from a channel called Ahoy that will link in the description.
Ahoy needs our help. He has 1.79 million subscribers.
The game is important for kind of 2 principal reasons.
While you're talking, I want to be like the showgirl and the
QVC.
Skippy. No, I'm like this showgirl in like this skimpy dress. It's like showing off like the car.
Oh yeah, I thought you said Skippy. I thought it was like a peanut butter thing.
No. I just want to be scantily clad, but I'm not.
Well, people don't know what you're wearing or not wearing from the waist down.
That's a great point.
But Modern Warfare is important for two key reasons. One is literally in the title.
Yeah.
This sort of movement away from World War II shooters, which had been extremely prevalent. And Call of Duty was quite popular before COD 4, but it was all in the World War II framework. And that's where most other contemporaneous series were, Medal of Honor, Battlefield, those things.
Yeah.
So it was a big change to go to Modern Warfare.
Yes,
as a period. I mean to say, as I use the term.
And then it was also a big deal to go back with like Battlefield 1 and like Call of Duty World War II. Yeah. People are like, man, it's been so long. So what's new is old again. But what's old is modern again in the context of Modern Warfare, because first-person shooters were heavily dominated in almost an aggressive sense, and kind of generic sense, by shooters that were based in history and based in World War I and World War II, and telling stories in those times. And I think there's a reason why especially like the Medal of Honor and the Brothers in Arms.
Brothers in Arms.
Is that a TV show? There's a game series that's something. Maybe that's one of the Medal of Honor games. But there are these series back in that time that are kind of
Dire Straits album.
That's not helpful. That are kind of just forgotten because that aesthetic was so and time period was so saturated at the time that people pretty quickly wanted to get away from it. And it was not the first, but Modern Warfare was the first mega successful one to shift the online FPS multiplayer game into the modern day, and that totally makes this game feel super fresh, especially as someone like me who has played the Call of Duty games, the early ones. Those games that really run together in my mind, but this is a phenomenal game. I have played the campaign of this game and I thought it was excellent, and it really holds up well to this day, and it's definitely a game with an enduring legacy.
Yeah, and by the way, incidentally, the video game series is also called Brothers in Arms.
Okay.
I was right.
All right, good. Yeah.
But the
I was going to say that, and then I'm like, no, it's a TV show, but it's also an album?
It's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Speaking of all kinds of things, there's all kinds of things from COD 4 on the gameplay level that became important to shooters moving forward. Your various like RPG elements.
Sure, yeah.
It's probably the
leveling up your character, unlocking different loadouts and things like that.
Equipping perks, all kinds of things. There's this sort of like bucket of smaller design ideas I think kind of fit in this idea of sort of bringing like an RPG type philosophy to FPS.
Yeah.
And that obviously had a pretty immediate impact on other FPS series.
Yeah. Because then everyone suddenly wanted to make the next Call of Duty.
Everyone wanted to make the next Call of Duty, including, if I can make a segue, and watch this. Watch it. I'm going to pull some prop comedy here, including the next developer we're talking about, Bungie, who before they made Halo Reach.
Sure, you were able to work that in. This was not released in 2007.
No, but this was quite COD flavored.
Yes.
The last core Halo game that wasn't was Halo 3, and it's the same we're going to mention here.
That's game number 2. It is the only one of our core 5, well, okay, it's one of 2 of our core 5 that we do not have prop comedy to hold up, so I can't be a skimpily clad showgirl here. But imagine this says 3 on it, because Halo 3 is our second one, and actually, I think another area we can draw in comparison, Call of Duty 4 and Halo 3, these are 2 of the most popular game. What is that?
I'm just showing off the manual.
Okay, we're doing a little unboxing for a game that has been gently used. Call of Duty 4 and Halo 3 were 2 massively culturally successful games. These were marketed to high heaven. They sold incredibly well. There was incredible hype around both of these games, and obviously in Call of Duty sense, it was Modern Warfare that skyrocketed the series to the acclaim and popularity that it still maintains to this day. And Halo 3 is another example of a game that shows what video games can be in terms of popular understanding and cultural impact. This is a big one.
Yeah. By the way, I just want to make sure people saw the photosensitivity warning inside the manual, which is why I was showing off that first page.
Well, I wasn't paying attention. I was trying to host a video.
I want to quickly read another comment here. It comes from our friend Steven in the Discord server, who says, 2007 was the year of Halo 3 for me. we had study leave for end of school exams. We were supposed to be revising, and we just went to a friend's house as our parents were out all day and played Halo 3 multiplayer. Our friends, of course, all thought we were out studying. Now, that's very similar to my experience with Splatoon much later. But the interesting thing about Halo 3 is just a sort of level of cultural ubiquity.
Sure.
It had, and the sort of knock-on effect that had on games as a whole.
Sure.
Because you got to keep in mind that, PS3 is still flagging at this point, 2007. For sure. Xbox 360 is dominating, and Microsoft was dominant in the gaming space in a way with the launch of Halo 3 in particular. They've not been since. It was...
You're only going to see one PlayStation game referenced here today. And we were going through the list of games especially published by Sony in 2007. It's things like Folklore and Lair and Heavenly Sword. And quickly you're like, oh man, that's rough. Especially in comparison to maybe the definitive Microsoft release of all time, the definitive Xbox game of all time, Halo 3.
They had nothing like Halo 3. And I mean, the game set the record for it was the biggest entertainment launch. Yeah. And that means all forms of entertainment in its opening weekend, which is quite exceptional. Actually, in the Console Chronicles, friend of the program, friend of us and just life, Brendan Hess.
Oh yeah, I know
actually wrote about the launch of Halo 3 for the book and interviewed the composers and interviewed a bunch of people who were there in line, who were working in retail at the time.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, and just sort of the cultural moment there. Yeah. And the way that Halo 3 really embodies this sort of movement into the mainstream for games. Yeah.
I definitely think you can consider 2007 a pretty solid turning point for the popularity of games in a cultural sense. I don't think necessarily you can... I don't think you can say like, okay, sales went up a significant amount, but games like Modern Warfare, Halo 3, and another game that we'll get to, again, just start the grinding games and games culture into the popular consciousness in a much larger way.
Yeah, and I think for, we talk about some of these games like a look forward. I think also Halo 3 is sort of the end of an era also for Microsoft. Sure.
Yeah.
And obviously, they continue to do extremely well through the 360 era, but their dominance was shaken, and both PS3 and 360 end up in about the same place by the time the generation's done.
Yeah, I think PS3 barely out. It's like $1 million ahead, which is crazy when you think about it.
Particularly when you think about where it started. But I mean, the sort of dominance of Bungie, the dominance of Microsoft, what it meant for people, for that midnight launch, that weekend. Obviously, the endless, to this day, amounts of fun people still have with Halo 3. Is critical. I remember being a kid. I didn't have a 360. But I remember seeing on the news local channels talking about Halo 3. So it's a big one, and it's one of my favorite games ever, even though I didn't get to play it when it was new. So
what's interesting about Halo 3 is this one I think sticks out to me as a definitive moment, an essential game for 2007, an essential game for the popularization of games as a medium culturally, but it's a game I have played, but I don't think, unlike many of the other games we're going to mention today, I don't think it's as much of a game that takes massive leaps forward design-wise. And I don't think there was a ton of people copying Halo 3 in particular. You had a lot of people that were trying to make another Halo-type game, but that was the popularity of Halo 1 and Halo 2 into Halo 3 that it continued, obviously. But Halo 3 isn't the kind of game like, frankly, all the other ones we're mentioning today, where it's like, oh, this was directly inspired pretty much only by blank.
Yeah. I mean, I think that in reality, this is partially biased by how much I love Halo. Yeah. But it also is just, if a game could encapsulate that time in the industry, in the console space,
it would be Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare.
Well, what's interesting is I think Halo 3 was probably the last time that an FPS was bigger than COD.
Oh, sure.
And obviously Call of Duty, and even I think Ahoy was saying this in their video, very quickly COD goes on to be bigger and bigger and bigger each year, and that biggest entertainment weekend ever becomes attributed to COD and attributed to COD again and again and again.
And GTA somewhere in there.
And GTA somewhere.
And we're about to get the next biggest one probably next year,
which will be pretty huge. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's important for what not only Halo represented to Microsoft, but to the furthering of games as a whole to shut out Halo 3. Yeah. But
this is where I would hold my Halo 3 if I had one.
Let's go on to another game here. Assassin's Creed 1.
Assassin's Creed. Yeah, look at that. Look at this guy. What's that character's name? That's not Ezio. I think it's Connor?
Desmond?
No, No. You're thinking of the guy outside of the Animus. It's a whole thing.
Connor is in Assassin's Creed 3. I played that one.
I have not played Assassin's Creed.
Benicio?
No. I have not played Assassin's Creed, but as the beginning of an enormous legacy in terms of an continually ongoing franchise, and still to this day, Assassin's Creed Shadow, I would say, is going to be one of the highest selling and is one of the most anticipated games of this year. And we are 14, did I do the math there right? No, 17 years removed from the launch of this game. It is that in the direct legacy of Assassin's Creed, but also I think that the popularity of Assassin's Creed into Assassin's Creed 2, into something like Far Cry 3, of course, all coming from Ubisoft, this is one of the games that really begins to cement the open world collectathon, open world game style that dominates the 2010s especially. And this game in specific, Assassin's Creed, is definitely one that is looked back on with less fondness in itself, but as an essential game of this year that influences design trends, it can't go understated how important Assassin's Creed is, with the markers on the map and with the parkour system, and evolving the other kinds of parkour-based, combat-based exploration games into a more solidified formula that is then iterated on and copied to the point where you even get kind of an Assassin's Creed type game from Nintendo with Breath of the Wild. I mean, without this game, Breath of the Wild doesn't happen in the way that it does.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get to Assassin's Creed without this sort of like 6th generation Prince of Persia games,
of course.
But you don't get to the overwhelming majority of open world games in the second half of this generation and the 8th generation as well without Assassin's Creed, and without Ubisoft releasing games like this and Far Cry 3, which sort of established their framework for open world, which was just sort of taken as the way to do an open world for a long time, until titles like Breath of the Wild, until titles like Elden Ring begin to challenge the conventions a little bit, but as you're saying, still rely on them.
Oh, absolutely.
So, Assassin's Creed is an essential one. No comment here from anybody, but
we commented on it.
We commented.
Does that counts for something, huh?
Tucker, let's talk next about another one we don't have prop comedy for.
What?
Oh, I'll say that one for the last.
Okay, fine, that's fine.
Don't look.
Don't look. Oh, hey,
spoiler.
Whoopsie. Oh, that's not one of those. Next game, the fourth game on the Essential Games of 2007, as chosen by Backlog Banter, is
Team Fortress 2.
Team Fortress 2, and we have a comment that we're going to start off our conversation with from
our friend Joe. We actually have 2 comments here.
Joe mentioned.
And a lot of good material here I'm going to get into. Yeah. But we'll start with what Joe says. I'd argue that Team Fortress 2 is the most influential multiplayer game of the 21st century. You don't get the modern hero shooter, games as a service, customization, monetization, and the free-to-play service model without it.
Yeah.
That's not even mentioning the game's continued cultural significance given the dominance of source filmmaker and content creation and its storytelling cinematic approach, which gave the roadmap to League of Legends, Overwatch, Genshin Impact, and more. For better or for worse, the gaming landscape is what it is today because of TF2. And I want to just immediately dovetail that with a comment from our friend Murph, who says,
why is it called dovetailing? What does a dove's tail look like so specifically that it then requires a idiom?
Dove's tail.
I can't imagine a dove's tail looks that different from any other. I mean, it's kind of like a fan. Odd. More research required.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below.
Yeah. Dovetail into Murph.
Well, dovetail into Murph, who says, could it be argued that the Orange Box,
yes,
and for people who don't know, the Orange Box is a collection of Valve releases that came to console in this package called the Orange Box.
Yes, which was Portal, TF2, Half-Life 2, Half-Life 2 Episode 1, Half-Life 2 Episode 2.
And then, was it Left 4 Dead or something? Was that separate?
No, Left 4 Dead was 2008, I think.
That was a separate release.
Yeah.
Could it be argued that the Orange Box is responsible for the rise of Steam as the marketplace for PC games? I know Steam existed as early as 2004, but it was mainly a launcher for Valve games. It took until around the release of the Orange Box until more people were using it, and that could be what drove Valve to branch out into the service.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I agree in the sense of the set of games that are in the Orange Box contributes to Valve and Steam becoming as popular as they are, but I think we can just draw this all back in, even though Half-Life 2, the episodes, and Portal are all great games that are still revered. Team Fortress 2, in it being a multiplayer game, in it being an online game, in it being a game that has in-game purchases and has a store and has a culture around it, is, I think, maybe the definitive, this is why Steam became popular, because Steam Marketplace and the selling of hats and being an online shooter, which of course was possible on PS3 and 360, where the Orange Box also released, but was obviously most popular on Steam. And as a shooter, it's most popular on Steam. And so TF2 is not the game that would have jumped straight to my head when I was making this list. I think when I was making my ordering of, which games do I want to have on this list, I think I probably had that at 6 or 7. So it was certainly on there. But it is the influence of this game in its design and monetization trends, and in the popularization of Steam, and then also in the weirdly unsung way that Joe mentioned of source animation and those characters and the trailers for the characters really creating something interesting with the internet. This is an all-timer in terms of like 5 different ways. It was incredibly influential.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to include Murph's comment as well, because it's sort of an indication of the year that Valve had. And if you had to like give a developer of the year award, I think you could argue Infinity Ward, but I think your best bet is to argue Valve. And we'll get to another game that was new from Valve this year a little bit later on in the video. But when we're looking at this new fleet of releases from them, when we're looking at the ecosystem they're creating, it is springboarding off of what Murph said, it is TF2 in particular that deserves a lot of that credit. And I think that's totally true. I mean, not only is TF2 essential for all the reasons you spelled out already, but it's also a game that is still played so regularly.
Absolutely.
We were looking at Steam DB recently, and there was how many hundreds of thousands of concurrent players.
Which is ridiculous. This game is 17 years old. I mean, I honestly think other than games that are more consistently updated, like something like World of Warcraft, it's got to be one of the oldest, most played games concurrently still.
You'd imagine so. I mean, it's even has 4 years on Minecraft and things.
Yeah.
So it's a perennially important game. As Joe laid out, there's many facets to its success. As Murph laid out, it was just part of a larger advancement of Valve as a major player. Largely in the PC space, but during this era, they were certainly a lot more interested in console as well. Because you got to remember also, you had things like Half-Life on the 6th generation systems, and Left 4 Dead 2 continued to release on console.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. I mean, there are some ports later down the line, but also Valve hasn't been making many games recently.
So they're making.
Did Artifact come to Switch?
No, but what's that thing they're making now? They're making a hero shooter now.
Oh, that's right. The one that hasn't been officially revealed. Yeah. Like Gunpunk or Gunspurge or something like that.
Gunspunk.
Gunspunk. I also do want to drill in on the monetization and the in-game purchases of this, because this, I think, is where, for my mind, when I was a young guy, still am in some ways, getting into PC gaming, the idea of, because I was playing on Nintendo mostly before this, the idea of in-game purchases and, frankly, purchasable cosmetics was something that made no sense to me.
No.
And then my friends were talking about selling hats in TF2. And, of course, that dovetails into, I'm using the idiom, I don't even really know what it means, into where I think really the popularity of in-game microtransactions happens, which is gun skins in CSGO. But TF2's hat store and the Steam Marketplace kind of becomes what every NFT and in-game purchases and microtransaction cosmetic things, and I think you get loot boxes out of CS:GO with the gun skins, but it's just a ridiculous web that I don't think starts here. I mean, I don't know many games that are older than this that had as pervasive cosmetic microtransactions. Probably something like World of Warcraft, but this is certainly one of the elements, combined with the popularization of Steam, that makes that become something that is core to, especially online game design.
Yeah, it just totally changed everything.
Yeah.
If this list isn't ranked, but if I had to rank it, I would put TF2 at number 1.
Sure.
Personally. You know what I wouldn't put at number 1?
What?
But it's the next game we're going to talk about anyway.
Yeah. I think this is probably No, it's not. Okay, I was going to say the worst game of these 5, but I don't know. I kind of like this game. This is Uncharted Drake's Fortune.
I've never finished this game.
This is a not for resale copy, apparently. I don't know how I came upon that. That's odd.
It was resold to you.
Clearly. This is the copy I played about a decade ago. But yeah, Uncharted Drake's Fortune. Now, I want you to present the case for this one because you argued for this one to be in our 5.
Yeah. I think that this is a really important. Fucking think closer to the camera. There's all kinds of.
You see Nathan? You see his like ammo straps and his shotgun. Yeah, you know Nathan Drake's iconic weapon, a sawed-off shotgun.
Yeah,
the stage is yours.
I think that this is a really important one to include on the list. I think that this is the game that changed the course of PlayStation.
Yeah.
Obviously, Uncharted 2 is the bigger game by a mile and the better game, and also
definitely
the one that is
much like Assassin's Creed to Assassin's Creed 2. The second games in both those series are so much better.
Yeah, but when we're looking at this one, Uncharted 2 is a much better game, but Uncharted 2 is not a different game.
Yeah.
All of the bones of not only the future of Naughty Dog are here, but you have to think about the ways the future of Naughty Dog influenced the futures of Sony Santa Monica and the futures of Sucker Punch and all these teams. I mean, this was the first major title from PlayStation in the PS3 generation that illustrated...
You could have just ended the sentence there because they had a lot of nonsense in 2006 and early 2007. This was the first game of consequence on the PS3, which means you can also, I think, attribute the success and the rebirth of PlayStation in the cinematic, character-focused, 100%. Motion capture era that they still are in to this day to this game succeeding like it did.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, this is...
Or else.
Naughty Dog came off of the back of Jak and Daxter. Very fucking combat racing, whatever the last
Jak X combat racing.
Whatever the last one they made there was.
Prop comedy. Just imagine I'm holding it here. I do have it down there.
They're not gonna believe you unless you show it.
Keep talking.
I'm gonna set a rumor that you don't own Jak X.
I do. Jak X combat racing.
Do you?
I do.
He's grabbing something random down there. He's lying.
Jak X combat racing.
Open the case. Show me you have the disc. You can just have the case.
Oh, it's not complete in box though. I don't have the manual.
But that is a disc. Bring it a little bit closer to the camera so people can see for sure.
Make
sure they see.
Look, there's Jak X.
Yeah.
It's a real disc.
Yeah.
That's a real shine. That's my real computer that you're being reflected on.
Okay. Audit complete. You do own Jak X Combat Racing.
I do. And then they would turn around and do Uncharted Drake's Fortune.
And I think that Naughty Dog owned the PS3.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about them again when we do 2013. Yeah. Obviously. We'll talk about The Last of Us. Sorry, spoiler alert. We're going to talk about The Last of Us in 2013. But yeah, this game... You owe modern PlayStation this game.
Yeah.
I think.
No, totally. And I think you also can attribute... I think there are multiple dominant styles of games going into the 2010s. I think that you can credit quite a few of the games that we've talked about today to that. You can credit the open world games to this. You can credit the online FPS games to this. You can credit the action-adventure cinematic games to this. I mean, 2007, of course, there are... touchstones that led to these games. Assassin's Creed comes from Prince of Persia. Call of Duty comes from Call of Duty. And Uncharted comes from Tomb Raider mostly. But even those early 2000s Tomb Raider games are what this is ripping on. But no one talks about those 2000s Tomb Raider games. As far as I know, they're all bad.
Well, now you can play Tomb Raider Legends on your PlayStation 5
That's a great
system.
Point. That's a great point. It's one of the PS2 classics. But yeah, I think... Naughty Dog's dominance, I think PlayStation's dominance, I think the style of game that some people are getting tired of, but is certainly something that is dominant in games culture. Uncharted Drake's Fortune is a big part of that.
Yeah, and I'm just trying... What year did Gears of War 1 come out?
2006.
Before it, obviously. Yeah, so... Oh, I set up Gears.
Hey, but Gears 5 did come up.
Yeah, the first thing you get is Gears! Deluxe building set that looks for like their children who...
Yeah, but Gears 1 is it 2006 or 2005? I think it might be...
Gears of War 1.
Is it 2005?
2006.
Okay,
November 7th, 2006.
I gotta go with my gut. I know things sometimes.
The third person cover shooter was not invented by Uncharted. It was not invented by Gears. No. However, Uncharted does introduce into the mix some things that we still see constantly. The climbing is one I've been reflecting recently because they added Uncharted climbing to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah.
Which I found very perplexing.
Barely in Remake. if at all. There's a little bit of it.
I remember climbing like ladders or robot hands and moving around a subway system. Yeah. But it's neither here nor there. I think that this is a very, very critical game.
Yeah.
And that rounds out our list of the 5 most critical games, but it does not finish the video.
No, well, I just want to quickly attribute the what I have dubbed the anal bead structure of game design to Uncharted 1, which is linear area, open area, linear area, open area, linear area, open area. And that's your fault.
Nothing that ever happened before Uncharted 1.
That's your fault, Nate.
Now you just want to say anal beads.
I just want to make sure that I reference it as much as possible in our videos. So eventually, when someone's writing like a textbook about game design, and they're like, everyone's talking about the anal beads design, it comes from me, and me and Nate, we love our anal beads.
Wouldn't you say like Zelda 2 had the anal bead structure first?
Let's move on. We're done with our 5, the 5 that we have chosen to be the definitive backlog or chosen essential games of 2007. But again, this is a nuts-ass year. This is a year with a lot of games that could have been on this list, and arguments can be made for, and we have arguments being made. Well, that was never going to be on the list.
It's a good game.
That we had a lot of people write in about, and so we're going to go through the community submissions. Are you proving that we own it? Just showing the inserts?
First person, first come, first serve. He has a Club Nintendo redemption code.
There's no way that's still valid.
Well, I mean, Club Nintendo doesn't exist anymore, so.
Well, I'm just wondering if someone used it yet.
Also, if you do like this game, you might also like Medal of Honor Heroes 2 or Ghost Squad. I actually want to play Ghost Squad, but that's neither here nor there.
Go buy it.
Go buy it.
Let's move on. He's off his fucking rocker today. I'm trying to meet his energy, but this is bizarre. This is uncanny.
Let's start with a couple more submissions from our community.
Yes. While you figure out putting these inserts back into the paper sleeve of Link's Crossbow Training.
Which, by the way,
is a good game.
Incidentally, let's just mention it quickly. It's a good game.
I
don't really have more to add to it than that, but it's a good game. I'm going to take it off the list now.
Okay.
Bioshock.
Yes.
Is in some people's minds a big omission from this list. In my mind, I wouldn't know because I haven't played it.
Yeah.
But you know who has played it?
Everyone else?
The headshotting, globe-trotting nitro rifle himself, Daniel Neveroli from the Nerdic Gods.
That's his classic intro.
Who says the following: Bioshock changed the medium in terms of narrative design and storytelling. The audio logs are a refreshing way to allow players to experience story and lore without the game taking control away from the player.
Yeah, Bioshock is interesting because I think that this is one that I wanted on the list. I think over Uncharted. I think Uncharted is a much more directly attributable to design decisions, which is why I acquiesced and agreed and said that this should be in our top 5. But Bioshock is one that I think you can draw some inspiration from to other things. But the issue becomes when we're comparing it in a year with so many design ideas that became incredibly dominant, Bioshock's design is rock solid and it's one of my favorite games of all time, but it doesn't go on to be as inspirational to the medium as a whole as these other 5 that we've mentioned.
I mean, it's a high watermark for sure.
Sure, yeah.
But there's a lot of other high watermarks we're going to talk about, like Link's Crossbow Training.
Like Jack X and Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. Yeah. We just took as many games that we owned from 2007 to have out here.
That's not a great game.
I had fun with it because I kept beating you.
Yeah.
But Bioshock, I as you were reading through his comment, I was trying to think what elements of Bioshock's design, game design, you can argue that were influential. I think maybe one of the only areas, and I think we also talked about this a little bit with COD 4, but is, especially as a single player game, Bioshock, I think, mixes together really well, being an FPS campaign, but also having what would have been called in the time RPG elements. You're upgrading your character, you are unlocking new abilities, and that is not something that was common at all in previous FPS campaigns, and that is something that is felt in some areas of FPS design still, but it's certainly not as dominant, but it was definitely new, and it gave that game its sort of its own thing. People are like, oh, it's an FPS game, but it's also an RPG. It definitely was unique in that way.
I like Daniel's point also with the audio logs.
Yeah, that's another one.
I think that's It's interesting because I feel like Uncharted has a lot of design elements now I think people are tired of, but I think that there are no design elements we talked about today that people are more tired of than audio logs.
Sure, yeah.
But nonetheless, I think
I especially hate them in what I've been playing today, Days Gone, where you play them and it comes out of the controller just at like 70 fucking volume, and it's like, oh, the freakers, the freakers. Hey guys, it's fucking freakers. I actually found one today, and I plugged my headset into the...
So you wouldn't have to hear it. That's
so I wouldn't
clever.
have to hear it. So you and Bo wouldn't have to hear it, because I knew that would drive me bananas.
I also just I think it's Bioshock's interesting just in that it has obviously very deep and very direct PC lineage, because it's picking up where System Shock and System Shock 2 left off.
Thief and things like that.
And I think that's really cool. And even the narrative emphasis, the pace of the campaign, I think, and I'm grabbing at straws here, but I think you can compare that to Half-Life pretty effectively.
Yeah, sure.
And
in a narrative FPS campaign, and that and Half-Life 2 are some of the best FPS narrative-driven campains ever.
Yeah, and you've got and the game was influential insofar as that other people wanted to have their Bioshock, the same way that like people wanted to have their COD or their Halo.
Yeah.
The Singularity is a great example. That game fucking sucks.
Yeah.
I know people like it for whatever reason. I think it sucks.
I don't know about that game.
But it was basically Activision saying like, hey, fuck, we really want Bioshock, and then Raven Software made that game.
And then they got sucked into the vortex.
They did.
Isn't Raven's on the support studios for Call of Duty now, right? Beanox, Raven.
Yeah. They made the Cold War campaign on their own, and that was a really good campaign.
Good for them.
It's better than Singularity.
Proud of you, Raven.
Let's go on to the next game, Tucker. Here, this is another game, and it's called Portal.
Yeah.
I want to read a comment here, fairly robust comment here from our friend Adam, who says, this is in response. There is a Discord in our Discord about the orange. There's a discourse in our Discord about the orange box, and there was actually Discord in that discourse because people were prioritizing different parts of the orange box above others. Yeah.
And which to be fair, we did have the conversation of should the orange box be one of our 5? We made kind of that kind of exception in our 2017 video when we talked about the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy. But
it's different.
It's different in that each of the games in the orange box, as we'll see, you can make arguments for being influential and one of the most essential games of that year. But the orange box did not go on to then inspire, as a collection, did not go on to inspire other people to put out 3 massive games on one disc for the price of one.
I mean, it's ostensibly a launcher.
Yeah.
There's a different intent behind something like the Insane trilogy. But I want to talk about Adam. A great comment here from Adam. It says, it's funny because the Half-Life section of the orange box isn't even what's most essential. People in this thread are talking about Team Fortress 2, but for me it's Portal. That game, still today, even after its sequel, is just the perfect first-person puzzle game, and it's this wonderful introduction to a style of gameplay that wanted to influence so many other games throughout the years. It's a perfect blend of comedy and puzzles. The writing is so excellent that the Cake is a Lie became the gaming inside joke for the decade after. It's really since only a couple of hours, and because it's only a couple of hours long, Portal is always going to be accessible even outside of its original orange box package. Portal is just one of the most perfect games ever in a year with so many great titles. Nothing even comes remotely close. Sorry for having such a boring and mainstream, almost predictable choice. Mine was Halo 3. But I don't see games as a culture day existing the way that it does with Portal. Hyperbole or not, it is essential.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that it is one of the most iconic games of all time. I would consider it and its sequel some of the best games of all time. But I wonder a little bit about what games he's talking about in terms of drawing direct inspiration from Portal. I think some smaller things that come later on, like Superliminal and like Viewfinder.
I'll put it to you this way.
Yeah.
Because I actually, reading this comment, I think that Portal, I'm going to make this number 6 most essential game.
Okay.
It's a tag-along now. Because I like the point that Adam makes here about tone.
Oh, sure.
Because I think that tone is what walks you to Stanley Parable.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Into a lot of games like that. And I think that particularly on the PC side of things, I think that the sort of irreverence of, is it GLaDOS in the first game?
GLaDOS in both games.
GLaDOS in both games, right.
Well, I mean, Wheatley's the ultimate villain of the second game because GLaDOS gets turned into a potato. You remember her being a potato? She's stuck on your gun.
I kind of remember that. I do remember that.
Yeah.
And I remember
that's funny.
There's like I honestly, I kind of forgotten a lot about most of the Portal games.
Yeah.
But I do think that the irreverence of them, the wit of them,
sure.
is critical. And I also think that as a sort of furthering of the puzzle genre,
totally,
it's a pretty critical one. It's a genre fusion with the FPS in a way that Metroid Prime is. It
is also kind of hard to pin down because very few things do what Portal did. I mean, it's such a difficult thing to wrap your head around, doing first-person puzzling like this, that it still stands singular to this day. And Portal, I think, out of all the games we've mentioned today, because it hasn't been iterated on as many times, though I would say I prefer Portal 2 pretty significantly over Portal 1. I think this is the game that we've talked about today that holds up the best, because Portal, in its structure, in its visual clarity, the art design of the Aperture Science laboratories and the voice acting and the physics and all this, it's just rock solid tight. and there's not really any holes you can poke into Portal in its design, but it's also so unique and so esoteric that it has certainly been attempted to in its comedy tone and in its world bending thing with like Manifold Garden and, as I mentioned, Superliminal, things like that. Some games have tried to do Portal again, and I think some have succeeded. I actually like those games that I mentioned.
Portal Bridge Constructor.
But yeah, Portal is I think my favorite game that we've mentioned today.
Sure.
But I agree on the writing side a little bit, but from a design level, I think Portal is just so singular that it's definitely essential, but it's not as essential and influential as I think the other ones we talked about.
Yeah, I almost wonder if Portal is one of those games, sort of similar to like a Metroid Prime, where you'll hear a lot of developers cite it, but you won't necessarily see in the final product where that comes in. But the reality is, when you're looking at Portal, there's a lot of things to learn from that game in terms of intuitive design, in terms of giving the player just enough space to make mistakes and figure things out. And I mean, it really is an exceptional game. I'm the inverse of you. I prefer Portal 1 to Portal 2, but I think part of that is, for me, because Portal is such a successful package.
Absolutely.
Even its own sequel feels derivative of what is, to me, one of the most inventive games.
No, I absolutely understand that. I think that another thing that he mentioned when he talked about the cake is a lie thing is that this is, of the late 2000s and early 2010s, this is the one of the games that has the most iconography. And whenever, I mean, I'm sure you remember this, being someone growing up around games at the time, of video, being a gamer and the references to video games that were like the gamer in-group things, pulled from a pretty slim pickings of certain games, and it was things like Arrow to the Knee from Skyrim, and you'd get a big Dragonborn thing, and you'd get a Master Chief standing heroically or whatever, or Gears of War and things. But Portal, in its sense of humor and in the companion cubes and in the turrets and in the blue and orange portals and in GLaDOS and Wheatley and the Aperture Science. What are you fucking laughing about?
No, I was thinking there's a really funny Portal tweet where it's like, I use a Portal gun to fuck my own butt, and then some of the Donkey Kong profile picture replies me like, I just use it to pick things up easier, but that's a cool idea too. I was just thinking about that.
But I just remember quite significantly the blue and orange portals and the companion cubes and things like that were just, that was gaming. Like, those were some of the, if you're a gamer and you like gaming, and it was even before I played Portal, I was just saying like, blue and orange, like
or think about the cake is a lie as a reference in Minecraft, or things like that
in a lot of games.
I mean, I
that's got to be one of the most referenced. That certainly. And Shovel Knight showing up.
No, but I think you're right, and I think that is a sort of
Konami code.
The Konami code. I think that's a sort of ubiquity that is worth a mention in this video as well, for sure. But let's talk about another similar game. Similar in the sense that they came out in the same year. And that is Rock Band.
That should be our transition to each game. Let's talk about another similar game. Well, it came out in the same year, so it's similar in that regard. Rock Band.
From Murph's cohort, Bro.
Yeah.
Co-host of the Daydream cast, Bro says the following: I'll be the one to say Rock Band. You can point to Guitar Hero to represent the genre, and admittedly the genre is kind of dead now. But
hey, people play a lot of Fortnite Festival.
They certainly don't play with that fucking controller that PDP released, whoever it was. But Bro continues saying, for me, that doesn't change the fact that this genre was a cultural juggernaut. It was a great thing to play at parties or after high school with the buds.
Buds. Yeah, the bro buds.
Rock Band to me represents what I love about the genre and harmonics of the time. Specifically, I had the most faith in to make the best kinds of these games.
Yeah.
Here's my feeling about this.
All right.
Mr. Beast.
Yes.
I just think that...
Next president, Mr. Beast.
I just think that you got to go with Guitar Hero for this.
Yeah.
Because Rock Band is a result of a dispute around the Guitar Hero series, in large part. So I believe, fact check me in the comments, bro.
I don't know enough history about
I'm
Guitar
pretty sure
Hero,
it is.
though I'd like to learn. This is an interesting one because I agree that it's absolutely essential to this year. I think that this Rock Band releasing, being as good as it was and creating competition for Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero 3 also released this year, and that is a game that people really like in this genre. Shows that it's not just Rock Band doing it, not just Guitar Hero doing it, and then it is the battle between Rock Band and Guitar Hero that becomes what people think of when they think of the peripheral-led music rhythm games. It is the fact that both these companies are putting out games every year, and both of them are putting out a bunch of peripherals, and then no one likes the peripherals over time, and then they start filling up, like now garage sales and stuff. So
expensive.
And they're incredibly expensive now. And this was the one that I had as a kid.
Sure.
It wasn't the 2007 Rock Band game, but my mom had Beatles Rock Band. That was the Wii game that we had, and I think Rock Band to me is the one that's more interesting of the two series because it does, and though I think Guitar Hero then takes inspiration from this later on, but it expands what the rhythm games can be. You get the drum set, you get the guitar, you get the microphone. It's not just the guitar, and that I think makes it feel more complete of an experience. Of course, Guitar Hero is very focused, but Rock Band's the one that I think of when I think of these things. But I agree, if we're talking about where the design trend started, Rock Band's a response. Rock Band is a direct inspiration. It's an expansion on what Guitar Hero started, but it was Guitar Hero, and that's actually when I think might get to when we talk about
2005, I think.
Okay.
As a sidebar, maybe when I'm just talking to the bro now, but he might already know about it. My goat, my colleague, Brendan not Brendan Hess.
Sorry, you just got it on the mind.
Hester. I always have Brendan on the mind.
Yeah.
Blake Hester, co-host of Jacob Geller's Something Rotten podcast, is writing a book about all these games. You should go buy his book.
Cool. Yeah.
He's covering all this history that I don't know about. Yeah. It's called The Oral History of Guitar Hero, Rock Band, and the Music Game Boom.
Boom.
And it's interesting because it had a boom, but then it also had a big bust.
Absolutely.
And that's why
that's got to be one of the hardest genre crashes in recent memory.
All I remember, speaking of big bust, there's a character from one of the Guitar Hero games I remember seeing Nintendo Power and being attracted to as a kid, but that's not a here nor there.
Yeah.
I think that it's hard to, it's hard to get a finger on the pulse of this era in time because it's just asinine how many Rock Band, Guitar Hero titles there were.
Yeah.
And you get DJ Hero in there, you get all kinds of shit. But to me, in my head, if we're thinking about inspiration, you really go back to Guitar Hero 1, and then everything comes out of Guitar Hero 1. So in a list this competitive, I wouldn't put Rock Band, but I think it's a great game to shout out because it was sort of emblematic of maybe the height of this era where you had Rock Band and Guitar Hero fighting out every year, if not like every 8 months when they would release new iterations. But
don't forget about SingStar.
Don't forget about Donkey Konga 3.
Sure.
Donkey Konga was the only peripheral rhythm game I had as a kid.
Yeah. Are we done with our responses?
We're done with all the responses from the community. Now we just have games.
Now we just got us.
Yeah, we just have games that we played and liked that we want to mention. Mostly on Wii.
Let's start with the obvious.
Yeah.
I think the next most... No. The game that I think people would consider maybe the essential game of this year that we have not mentioned to this point, and that's You Are Mr. Gay. Super Mario Galaxy. Super Mario Galaxy, another one of those considered one of the greatest games of all time, and iconography and music and innovation. It is a game that meets all of those marks, and the argument can easily be made for it to be close to this list. But I do think that again, kind of like Portal, being something that's very much its own thing and has a sequel, but doesn't go on to inspire many games exactly like it. I think it's harder to make a essential in terms of design argument for Mario Galaxy versus Assassin's Creed and
totally.
like those games. Halo 3, I think, again, as we mentioned, is one that certainly less influential on design. What's going on? I'm hearing noises.
Oh, sorry, that's my foot.
Oh, okay. But Mario Galaxy, absolutely one of the essential games. When people think of 2007, this is maybe like in the top 3.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's one of my favorite games of all time, and to spare us from having to belabor the fucking massive list of Wii games I want to talk about, I generally think that this was a really exciting year for Nintendo, because
it was a crazy year for Nintendo. They put so many games.
They did, and I really have 4 here that I think are particularly worth highlighting.
Okay.
But we also have others here just to shout them out quickly. Bioshock is Charged is still a phenomenal multiplayer sports game. I still love that game. Endless Ocean 1, we've talked about on the channel many times. That's a great game too, and obviously
this is my contribution to this stack.
Yeah.
Big Brain Academy Wii Degree, which I would say is probably the best of this series. I mean, it's very similar to the DS one, but I really like this game. That's a lot of fun. You should give it a try.
I should give it a try, but I also know that like the Switch one is like just
it's very similar. It's very similar, and that is a problem with
the Switch one.
With the Switch one, not with this one, but they're both great.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the Wii, 4 games I have pulled out,
and also it gives us Dr. Loeb. Well, this game doesn't, but the first game, and Dr. Loeb is very important to our channel because of the EPD.
True. That is very true. We should pay him a royalty for his appearance.
Dr. Loeb, no, we talked about it. We go way back. It's okay.
You have some very successful hardcore titles on the platform. I mean, these are, in my opinion, 2 of the very best Wii games right here. I absolutely love Prime 3, and I obviously love Galaxy. But then you also had really exciting casual software. WarioWare falls somewhere in the middle, although it's just a very fun,
that's a great goddamn game.
We have a funny video about that game.
Yes, I'll link that in the description.
You'll link that. We won't provide any context. You should just click the link.
Yes.
But then you also have this, which is a game that I was considering putting on the list.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Wii Fit.
Yeah, that was one that was like in the 7 or 8 range for me.
Yeah.
In terms of just expand. And I think actually this is one I want to talk about.
Sure.
In terms of expanding what video games can be in the cultural consciousness, and not in the way that Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty and Halo 3 popularized video games as the hardcore mostly shooters. A lot of people playing these games because they're very gamey, but Wii Fit in this combined with Nintendogs and with Brain Age and things like that show that casual gaming and video games just as with the systems and with the hardware, if they're marketed to a different audience and designed in a different way, can just seed the ground for a wider group of people to interact with video games as a medium. I mean, this is an essential game for that. And actually, I don't remember who mentioned it. Damn, this is a really good condition copy of Wii Fit. Just admiring it. And it's complete in box. See, this one's got the manual. Someone mentioned it on our server.
Game store. They're great.
Yeah, they are. They are. Kickback Gaming. This is a game that is, or at least was for a while, used quite heavily in old folks' homes, in hospitals. Just training people to have better balance and better stamina, and it's through the art of video games and the popularity of Wii Fit. I mean, this is what, the 3rd highest selling game on the Wii or something like that. It's something that can't be understated in a breadth of the medium way, how important Wii Fit was. But Wii Fit and its sequel, not the Wii Fit U, are kind of the only examples of this really, really succeeding. Of course, there were Zumba games on Kinect, and there were obviously things like Just Dance are fitness adjacent. But Wii Fit, yeah, and of course Ring Fit much later down the line. But Wii Fit is like the definitive fitness game of all time, and it hasn't been topped.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just trying to find sales numbers, and I'm having a hard time doing it for some of the other games we mentioned today. But Wii Fit is a game that
I'm sure we can find them.
I don't know.
I'm sure someone knows how many copies Modern Warfare sold.
Well, let us know in the comments. Did Modern Warfare sell more or less than 21 million units? Because I believe that's what Wii Fit sold.
Oh, okay.
I love everything.
Way more. It has to have sold more.
Who knows?
Keep going.
I found this article here about Weehab.
Oh, is that kind of what I'm talking about?
It's what you were talking about. Yeah, that exact philosophy of there being cognitive, physical benefits of playing Wii Fit. And the way that Wii Fit...
I think it would have a detriment on me.
Wii Fit's really interesting because it's neither a super effective piece of fitness software
or a great game.
It's not. I actually really like Wii Fit, but I think it's not traditionally gaming in the way that a lot of other contemporaneous fitness games are, or things like DDR or whatever, the progenitors of the balance board and things like that. But it sits at this very interesting intersection of just general lifestyle that was incredibly important for explaining what Wii was, and incredibly,
and that era of Nintendo.
Exactly, and incredibly critical in, as you were mentioning, with like Kinect and everything.
And it's a touch generations game.
It's a touch generations game. Useful in directing Sony and Microsoft towards this very lucrative market.
No, absolutely.
And you were looking at your fucking PS Movie game?
I was just saying, they didn't do a fitness game in the same way. There's a SingStar Dance, but that's more of a Just Dance kind of thing. And there's Sports Champions, but that's more of a Wii Sports thing. But yeah, Wii Fit kind of was its own thing. But certainly one of the reasons why with Kinect and Move, they were inspired, because this is just such a massive success. Especially because of presumably how cheap this game was to produce. I mean, it is something that's very simple and focused, and the R&D of the board is really what you're putting your effort into.
And the board is expensive. That 20 million.
I got it for like $5.
Well, sure. The board's selling it at retail for $5 in 2007. So the massive success of the game is also really interesting in that lens. The way that Nintendo really tapped into a different vein, even a different audience, really. Or I'll put it to you this way: Wii Fit obviously is
Ooh. Scratch
Wii
that.
Sports.
Where is it?
Wii Sports bundled in with the system.
Yeah.
Wii Fit launching, because Wii launched in 2006, November 2006.
Correct.
It was 2005.
No, 2005 is DS.
2004 is DS.
Fuck.
2006.
Okay, sorry.
In 2007, you have Wii Fit illustrating that Wii Sports wasn't just a fluke.
Yeah.
It wasn't a one-off phenomenon. Nintendo, sure, you had a Wii Play in the middle there and that was successful, but Wii Play was bundled with a Wii remote.
Yes.
Wii Fit said,
and then Wii Play Motion that wasn't successful, but still was bundled with a Wii remote.
Wii Fit had the balance board. It had this big gimmick attached to it. It was a big barrier, just a mental barrier of, okay, now you gotta put this mat under your feet and this controller in your hand.
Yeah.
But people did it because it tapped into something that they needed, which is a new type of gaming experience.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think that it's only not in the top 5, just insofar as that it I think similarly to Guitar Hero in some ways, it was as a fad.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think sometimes
it's harder to put fads on this kind of list, because especially with hindsight, I mean, you could have made the argument in 2010 or whatever that Wii Fit was one of the biggest games of that year, and so certainly is one of the most essential games of 2007. But we have seen that fad end, and so we look back and we're like, okay, it was a fad.
Yeah, but I think fad is often used with like a negative connotation. But I don't think that's the case when we're looking back at games like Wii Fit and we look back at Guitar Hero. But I just love 2007 for the Wii with these massive, really hardcore titles. I mean, Galaxy to a lesser extent, but Galaxy is still a far cry from Wii Fit. Totally. And then obviously Prime 3 Corruption is still one of the highest production value titles Nintendo's ever made, and I think a phenomenal game.
Yeah. I just want to quickly go over some of the other things because I think this is secretly one of Nintendo's not best years, because I don't think there are many titles that I would consider some of my favorite in there.
I would put it in their best.
But Super Mario also that year. Yeah. Two Mario Party games in Mario Party 8 and Mario Party DS. You have Hotel Dusk. You have Professor Layton's Curious Village. That's starting the Layton series. You have Phantom Hourglass. You have Picross DS. Thank you. You have Planet Puzzle League. Diabolical Box also. Okay, wait. Some of these must be Japanese releases. Mario and Sonic Olympic Games is that year. We mentioned Link's Crossbow Training, and some Donkey Kong spin-offs. Jungle Climber was that year. They really went into some weirdo areas, but it's a very interesting year to look at from one company, all of these games in such diverse genres.
Yeah, and I also just want to shout out 2 Star Wars games quickly. One is Star Wars Battlefront Renegade Squadron on PSP. Give no significance to anybody, but I really like it. But then also another big one is Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga.
Oh, definitely.
Which is which I think is just sort of a cornerstone game for most people our age.
Might be like the definitive Lego game.
I think it's definitely a definitive Lego game. I mean, that's a really, really exceptional game, and I still enjoy it to this day. Other big games from this year: Crysis, Mass Effect.
Yeah, Crysis is an interesting one in that I have no experience with it, and frankly, I don't hear people talk about it much, and I know that in terms of design, it's not something that's particularly influential.
It's more of an idea. The idea of running Crysis is the thing.
Yes, and again, an argument can be made for that. Not as strong an argument of the other things you mentioned, and I think that it would certainly be in maybe just outside the top 10 of this. But the idea of a game of a really good-looking game is something that has been re-upped and re-upped and re-upped over the course of the history of the game's medium. But Crysis is a special one in that is still attached to it, and frankly, Crysis still looks good. You look back at gameplay, like, that's actually really impressive, especially from a team. I'm sorry, I don't even remember the name of the development team. No, that's not the name of the dev team, is it? That's the engine. Crytek is the engine.
I thought that was it. Hold
on. That has gone by the wayside. I think they still technically exist.
Yeah, developed by Crytek.
Oh, well, whoop-de-fucking-do. They're really lazy. Crytek on the Crytek engine made Crysis. And actually, you know what they also made? Far Cry. Far Cry 1 and 2. Yeah. Then they made Crysis. But the idea of a really good-looking game...
This is my Crytek.
Crysis is a game that looks really good. And that's kind of its only legacy, but that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so funny because it's sort of like a perennial idea, right? I mean, think back to SNES even. Mm-hmm. The Mode 7 games at the launch. Like F-Zero is a good game, but F-Zero is impressive. It was impressive as a launch game because look at what the SNES can do, right?
Pilot Wings is that, and it's not a good game.
I would agree with both the things you said. So yeah, I think Crysis is one of those things that will just really fade over time. Yeah, and it has, and even it
absolutely has.
The remastered versions are interesting, but they didn't really move the needle much at all. No,
I didn't hear anyone talk about that.
I did.
Name 5 people.
John Smith.
You know what? That's probably true somewhere out there. What else?
I just want to shout out No More Heroes.
Oh, okay, yeah, the first one.
I also just want to shout out a weird one here, Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles.
I never played it. I'd like to try it at some point.
I played it with my aunt quite a bit. It's a really, really good light gun Wii game. Yeah. And I believe the Dark Side Chronicles, which is the sequel, is even better. But I've not played that one. Also didn't come out in 2007, so it wouldn't be eligible for this video. Otherwise, you already said Phantom Hourglass. I love Phantom Hourglass. I think that's a very underrated Zelda game.
I still need to get to those DS ones. I think I might find them really interesting.
I think you would.
Yeah.
Especially Spirit Tracks, because Link drives a train and he plays Zelda's ghost in the body of a phantom.
Yeah.
Or not?
No. That's got to be Phantom Hourglass. No, wait.
No, it's right.
I don't know
I'm
what
right.
I'm talking about.
I'm right.
I haven't played these games. And the other one you have on this list, 2 more, are Osu, which is very interesting.
Oendon.
Because that game, Osu is basically a PC version of Oendon or Elite Beat Agents, which is the tapping on circles and sliding and
or
things.
Oendon too.
But Osu is the definitive game of that genre. Osu is still played to this day. Is still maybe like one of the most popular rhythm games of all time.
Certainly.
And I have friends that are so into Osu, and I watch them play on like super, super hard difficulty. I'm like, I can't even process what's happening here. But another game from this year that I don't know how popular it was at the time because it's not a game I know much of the history of. Yeah. But given that it's still incredibly popular to this day, it has to be at least mentioned here.
I agree.
And also Mass Effect 1 came out this year, and that is another one that I argued in my mind initially for being on there. But I have not played Mass Effect, and I have not played many games like Mass Effect. And so I am not in a place to, as definitively as the other games which I have much more experience with, say like, I know Mass Effect is big. I know it's very popular. I know it's definitely the game that helped to put BioWare in the dominant place that they were at that time. But it needs to be mentioned.
I mean, I just think if you mention any BioWare games, it should be Jade Empire.
No.
Or Sonic Chronicles Dark Chronicles.
That probably released in like a year before or something like that.
I bet it released in 2001.
2001? I doubt it because it's a DS game.
That's a bad guess. 2006. 8.
Oh, well, I was talking about 1 year, and I was.
You were looking at the screen. You said the wrong number. Tucker, we did it.
Well, I want to mention some. I want to mention my game.
I said we did it. We finished this part of the video. Now you're talking about more games.
Yeah. I'm just gonna mention a couple because, to be honest, even though this is one of the definitive years of all time, there are still many of these games that I have not gotten into yet. I'm sure I would love a game like Mass Effect, but I haven't played it. I'm sure I'd enjoy Crysis if I gave it a shot, but I have not played that game. Things like Rock Band. And as I mentioned, I love Bioshock. I love Portal. I love Modern Warfare. I love Galaxy. But to me, the year has a pretty quick fall off because I actually do think a lot of these games don't hold up the best. But there are a few other like weirdo mentions. Trauma Center New Blood, I had a lot of fun with. Not a game of any particular repute, but it's a game that with personal significance to me. And then another underrated game that I implore you to go check out on PS Plus Premium, which is Pursuit Force Extreme Justice.
Okay.
Pursuit Force is a lot of fun, but it's annoying. Pursuit Force Extreme Justice is a lot of fun, and it's not annoying. It's Pursuit Force. It's its own thing. Go look up gameplay. It's kind of hard to explain. But yeah, I like that game. And also another one to mention quickly that doesn't have any particular influence in terms of design, but again, have you heard of Passage?
No.
Passage is one of the early games as art, in that it is a game that is playable for free in a browser. It is made by one person. It is only like 90 seconds long or something like that. It's a very, very short game.
I'll play it right now.
You could. And it is about dealing with the change in a person's life from their birth to their death. And it does this all through gameplay, which is very basic pixel animations of you're navigating a maze. It's just a series of blocks, but and it shifts over time as your character grows, and as life becomes more complex, the maze becomes more complex, and then you get a partner, and then you have to be split up and things. It's a really interesting game in that it was one of the first games made by one person with a very clear message intent told through gameplay. And so it's definitely a notable one for that year, but also one that has gone completely overlooked. I'll also include the link to play Passage in the description of this. If what I've said sounds interesting to you, and again, finish it in like 5 minutes or whatever. So yeah, that's just one to shout out.
Cool.
Yeah.
A Wenda and Cheadle.
Is word of the day?
Word of the day is 2007.
2007. Bioshock.
It's 2 words.
Bioshock.
My eyes are just wandering.
Wandering? Are you a wanderer?
Yeah, I'm like Sharon. I'm like Sharon the Wanderer.
Oh, Sharon.
Alright.
Do I like any games that came out in 2007?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter.
Hey guys. It's me, Backlog Banter. Hey
everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter.
This fucking guy.
I'm going to go and I'm eating right now.
That's not a hard enough stream.